It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Little scare at the Capitol today in Washington, D.C., Capitol evacuation. Evidently, a single-engine aircraft got everyone all in a tizzy. Scared. Saw the tweets going out in the evening going, what could it be? I was waiting for, reports of who knows what. Turns out that the Washington Nationals were going to have a parachutist into National Park, and they didn't bother telling anyone. And everyone, all in an uproar, evacuated the Capitol, high alert. And I'm like, what would have happened if they just shut that down? That would have been bad. But nothing, everything worked. Everyone, did their emergency stuff. It was a kind of a good test, kind of a good, one of those when you were in school, kind of the fire drill, kind of a good drill, is what it was. And there you go. Some good news. Nancy Pelosi had a great tweet, one I liked, quite happy with. She said, our first year working together for workers' rights and good paying union jobs. President Biden, Democratic majorities. And she ticked off a couple things. Protected union pensions. The Butch-Lewis Act did get through. Help save multi-employer pension funds. That is a great thing, something I was pushing for years. Happy about that. She says they delivered on infrastructure. Yes, $1.2 trillion historic infrastructure bill that's going to put people to work, going to help rebuild our infrastructure, and going to use American products and union labor. Great, great stuff. She goes on to say reversed Republican harm to apprenticeships. Yep, did a lot of good on that front. Also moved us toward a more level playing field for workers. And look, policy-wise, good stuff. And I'm happy about that. I'm thrilled with it. I think it's a good start. It's moving us in that direction. Now, we're in a moment where all we keep hearing about is inflation. We're in a moment where all we keep hearing about is, how bad things are. And the reality is, you look at corporate America, it's great for them. And this is one of those moments where I wanted to start today in this world, because we are seeing, across the board, corporate America, best profits in 50 years. The oil companies are seeing their best profits since 1950. They are happy. The shipping companies, the people who bringing stuff across the pond with the boats, massive profits, record profits, CEO pay through the roof, highest ever. We're seeing stock buybacks, we're seeing dividends, we're seeing records on all of that stuff, and yet it's the workers' fault, it's Joe Biden's fault, it's all that stuff. You see the reports. We've got CEOs making in excess of 1,000 times what their employees are making. You think of the Gap. You think of Mattel, the toy company. You think of Nike. You think of Dick's Sporting Goods, Foot Locker. You go down the list. There's a bunch of them. But it's Joe Biden's fault that inflation's through. It's not the gouging. It's not corporate CEOs pay. No. It's Joe Biden. And, of course, it's those greedy workers. And the weird thing is, I remember, and this is one of those worlds where I think we as Americans, we as working folks, got to wake up to what is. Because if you remember a number of years back, Harvard Business School did a study. And they found that the average American believed that CEO to worker pay was like 20 to 1. And that's what it used to be back in the 60s. They thought 7 to 1 was about right. But we're at, in a lot of cases, 200, 300, 400, some, like I said, over 1,000, some over 2,000 to 1. And yet, somehow, it's the workers' fault for demanding things. And the reason I bring this up is I point to Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz is back as chief executive at Starbucks. And he had something interesting to say that, again, this is another rich guy talking down to poor working people. So the billionaire Howard Schultz, new back in his job, talking to a big town hall, says, quote, it doesn't matter what industry, corporations are terrified, he said, terrified of what happens when workers organize. Here's where it gets a little sensitive because I've been coached a little bit. But I do want to talk about something pretty serious. We can't ignore what is happening in this country as it relates to companies throughout the country being assaulted in many ways by the threat of unionization. He said, I can say this two ways. I can say I'm anti-union, or I can say I'm pro-partner and pro-Starbucks. And I'm going, hold on, wait a second. It's not, again, it's not the workers who are pointing out how badly they're being treated by themselves. It's Starbucks who's treating them badly. It's Starbucks who's been diminishing their wages and lowering their hours, and it's the Starbucks management who's been treating them poorly. It's been them doing all this stuff. It's them doing this. Yeah, it's been them doing this. But what I love from Howard Schultz is that he has this, we're going to pit one group against the other, and we're going to create this adversarial relationship. We're going to have one group against the other. I'm going to pay half the working class to murder the other half. Jay Gould. I'm going to pit one group against the other so that I can profit from it. And that's the divide and conquer. Difference is, and this is what's scaring people like Howard Schultz. Amazon, you saw some workers organizing. Starbucks, we're seeing a bunch of them organizing. Apple, first story down in Georgia, beginning to organize. You're finally starting to see low-wage workers saying, you know what, we've had enough of this. Oh, we can be pro-partner and pro-Starbucks and work for poverty wages and deplorable conditions for people who treat us poorly. Oh, gee, thank you. And the thing is it doesn't have to be adversarial. You can be partners. You can be pro-Starbucks. You can be pro-union. You can both coexist and move forward. It doesn't have to be what Howard Schultz is pushing it to be. You can both have the same kind of thoughts in mind, making Starbucks a very good place to work, a very profitable place, so Howard Schultz can stay a billionaire. And oh, by the way, all the workers there can earn a decent living to support their families. The reason I bring this up is today I was looking through some old contracts and some paperwork that I saw online. And one of them came up to an old Anheuser-Busch, August Busch contract from Massachusetts from the late 70s. And one of the things that caught my attention is in 1979, the wage for a warehouse person was $9.25 an hour. $9.25 an hour in 1979. So I went to the inflation calculator over at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and did the little economic wizardry thing. And the little computer thing said, in today's dollars, that would be $34.67. So I'm thinking it's warehouse work, kind of like Amazon. Amazon's so proud of the fact that they're paying 15 to 17. I'm going, where's the other half? Where'd the other half of the paycheck go? Well, we know where the other half of the paycheck went. It went to Jeff Bezos. It went to the billionaires who they're at the top. It went to the shareholders who got the stock buybacks and the dividends. It certainly didn't go to the workers. And then I went through some of the other contracts. They got 14 paid holidays. They got election day paid off. They got full health care, no payment out of their pocket, and a full defined benefit pension fund, no money out of their pocket. So we go from that point in 1979, almost $35 an hour with full union health care, defined benefit pension, to today, Amazon paying $15 to $17 an hour. And they're telling me that somehow that's the best we can do. Sorry, not buying it. Not buying it at all. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, share your thoughts. I want to go to the phones. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. We got Kathy on line one. Kathy, how we doing today?
Oh, good. How you doing?
I can't complain. I understand you want to talk about books and banning books. Are we pro or are we anti?
Anti-banning books. But I was watching Randy Rhodes today. I love that woman. And she said they found out with research that the whole thing is a scam, that the guy that the books they want to ban, they want to replace them with books that are published by another company in Virginia and the head of the CEO of the company is Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia.
Does that surprise you at all?
No.
Okay.
I just hope the whole media gets a hold of the story and they make their life a living hell.
Yep. No, what I've been saying from the very beginning, all of these false attacks, whether it's on CRT, whether it's on, oh my gosh, they're teaching bad things in math in Florida, whether it's any of this, whether it's the don't teach my children about people of other thoughts. This is all about it's all about destroying public education so that they can get the dollars. Ultimately, what this is about is their voucher schemes. This is about privatization, the charters doing all that stuff. And more importantly, this is about the quiverful people, the religious extremists who want to homeschool and have taxpayers pay them to homeschool. That's the long-term goal of the extremists on the religious zealotry crowd. They want to be paid to take care of their children. Ultimately, that's the goal: destroy public education so that they can create even narrower-minded Christian warriors.
I know, but how can they can't call themselves Christians when they think killing people at the Capitol Police and other people for politicians is okay?
Look,
I just don't understand how they can kill people and call themselves Christians.
I don't know how they do a lot of things and call themselves Christians. I think a little bit later we're going to talk about what's going on down in Tennessee. I don't know how you can lock people up for being homeless. I don't know how you can literally take food out of the mouths of children. I don't know how you can do any of the things I don't know how you can be Rick Scott and want to destroy Social Security for seniors. I don't know how you can do any of the things they do.
I know. Well, I hope they fry Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's supposed to go to court on Friday. Let's see if she shows up.
Well, the hope is that the hope is the voters throw her out because she's a lunatic.
I know. She's completely wacky. Oh, and I wonder if Trump's buddy that he put in as the head of the IRS covered his ass again this time. He didn't have to pay taxes again.
Yeah. Well, we will see. We will see how that plays out.
I know.
But Kathy, I appreciate the thoughts. As always, great stuff.
Okay.
No, seriously, at the end of this, it always makes me wonder. And the weird thing is back to our CEO thing. The weird thing is some of the people who espouse their religiosity and their hyper Christianity and all that, actually some of the worst employers. Scary, the justification of what they can do in the name of Republican Jesus. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, something on your mind, give us a call. It's really, it just, wow, makes you crazy. How education has been assaulted in this country. And you wonder, how do we get the people in elected offices who do some of the dumbest things? You go, how'd they get that dumb? For instance, there is a Representative Debbie Lasko, a representative from Arizona. You cannot make this up. She said evidently that in the last 6 months on the Arizona border, they have apprehended, hear me when I say this, they have apprehended 1 billion migrants. A billion in 6 months. A billion. Yeah, no. No. No, Deb. No. And the thing is, said it with a straight face and didn't even try and walk it back. Very, very bizarre. Let's go to the phones. Alice on line 2. Alice, how are we doing today?
I'm okay.
A billion, Alice. A billion.
Proves my point. None of them know anything. They're all totally ignorant. Willfully ignorant, I might add, also. The reason why I'm calling is, a couple of things. First of all, I seen that the Michigan senator, the Mallory McMorrow, and I thought that was just fantastic what she did. And the second thing I wanted to say was, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene claiming her defense why she cannot be denied being on the ballot. It's unconstitutional. And I thought, lady, they're using the law that's in the Constitution. What part did you miss? Which points out to me that she has no clue what it says other than there's freedom of religion and freedom of speech in there somewhere and a right to bear arms.
There's a lot in there, and the sad reality is you get past the first part of the sentence, they lose interest.
I think you're right. And this, I know millions of others like me, I do not want to fund Christian education for somebody that's got 15 kids. They don't learn anything. They're not going to do us any good. It's just insane. But there you are.
No, there you are.
You have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks so much. But you're right. Here's the scary part in this. And look, I've known people throughout the years who've said this. And this isn't new. The charters, understand, the whole move towards vouchers was a response to desegregation. This was Uncle Milton Friedman's brainchild back in the 50s into the 60s. This isn't new. None of this stuff is new. These are new ways to segregate themselves and segregate their ideology and their belief structure because they want purity in whatever it is that their narrow-minded ideology will bring them. And look, this is where I struggle because, if you create kids who don't know anything, you create vulnerable children. As parents, if you don't prepare them for the world, you're really leaving them in a really vulnerable position. And I think back to when, I went to a college, a very small Midwestern college that had historically been for pastors and preachers. And, the parents went there, years and years ago, and it was a much different place. They then sent their kids, the PKs, the preachers' kids, and it was a much different place than the parents remembered. And the kids came very sheltered and very tightly wound. And early on, you saw them go in some very bad places and do some things that were very destructive to themselves because they weren't prepared. In fact, I remember there was one girl that, ended up attempting to kill herself because, she ended up, going to one of the parties, getting drunk and ended up having sex with somebody. And that was just, oh my God, the end of the world. And no one had prepared her for the possibility that this may happen. And this is a failure of parents. And I hear these people talking about parental rights. And if you're failing to prepare your children for the real world, and I tell my kids this all the time, my job as a parent is not to be, the strict enforcer and to make you do everything I say. My job as a parent is to get you prepared to stand on your own 2 feet and deal with the realities of the world as it comes at you, to make good decisions, to be prepared for what is coming at you, and to be able to make real-time good decisions to not get yourself in trouble and not get yourself, jammed up one way or the other. That's the role of a parent, not to create little ideologues. Look, you pass your values along, you pass your viewpoints along, you try and do the best you can, but this idea that we have to control absolutely everything that they see, hear, and read, and control their minds is, well, it's kind of like a kid fetish. It's kind of sick. It's kind of controlling and kind of dangerous. And I worry about the safety of these kids for when they decide that maybe I'm going to be my own person. Maybe I'm going to try and think for myself. And I know, heaven forbid, a kid try and think for themselves. It's just one of these weird spots that we're in, and I'm not quite sure where this lines us up. I'm just not 100% sure. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a lot to get to today. When we come back, Jared Yates Sexton's going to be here to share some thoughts on, kind of where we're heading as a country. Some of the authoritarian push that we're seeing. I didn't get to the Alex Jones stuff. Evidently, filing bankruptcy, possibly going to be seeking immunity from the government. To turn, maybe give some testimony, help tell some stories. Could this be the beginning of the downfall of, all of the Trumpkins and all of the stuff that happened on January 6th? Not 100% sure. But, the reality is, look, when the rats are jumping ship, because you got him coming out, you got Ali Alexander coming out, you've got people who are going and saying, hey, we're going to talk. But he's looking for immunity. Could be interesting. Going to take a quick break right here. On the other side, our good friend Jared Yates Sexton going to share some thoughts on toxic masculinity and tanning the boys. Evidently, Tucker is big on tanning the boys. Back after this with our Brown Boys. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2010. That was the day the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 workers and injuring 17 more. The rig experienced an initial blowout, releasing an uncontrollable flow of oil and gas from the well. Hydrocarbons then ignited, causing the explosion and fire. It caused a massive offshore oil spill of over 4 billion barrels and is considered the largest environmental disaster in U.S. history. British Petroleum was the main operator responsible for the well's design. The drilling contractor, Transocean, owned and operated the rig. A handful of smaller companies were also involved. While company and governmental officials initially argued the explosion was unforeseeable and then subsequently blamed each other, there were warning signs in the months leading up to the deadly explosion. Multiple equipment failures, design deficiencies, poor preventative maintenance, bad engineering decisions, and a chase for profits that emphasized low worker injuries at the expense of process safety all combined to create the disaster. As well, regulations and standards enforcement were weak in an almost totally deregulated industry. One phrase used by investigators to characterize the explosion was the normalization of deviance. From workers to managers to executives, none saw the explosion coming. There were dozens of contributing factors, as the Chemical Safety Board investigation noted. They listed 57 key technical, human, and regulatory factors in their 2016 final report. However, engineers had raised concerns about the potential failure of key equipment. Workers were sensitive to the fact that that they could be fired for raising safety concerns that delayed drilling. BP was ultimately found responsible and racked up over $70 billion in fines, cleanup, and settlement costs. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
For a long period of time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do.
I started my career in the operations field, just kept taking on new projects.
There's so many different opportunities that you can pursue in clean energy. But it was really great to know that there was a company so close to home in the renewable energy business.
Investment in the area would be huge. It would be great to be able to expand the area and give people jobs.
Having these opportunities for the younger generation would mean a lot for our community.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, gotta love Colorado. Brought us Lauren Boebert. What's not to love about Colorado? Evidently, Colorado State Representative Dave Williams is now suing so that he could be on the ballot as Dave Let's Go Brandon Williams. What the hell is that? You know, and that's one of those things. Hey, I want to be known as. It's like there's an image that I put out on Twitter of the F. Joe Biden flag, where they put the American flag over the UNC, and they're kneeling in front of it with a couple of strippers with a bunch of kids. And I'm going, yeah, this is family values. These are the people who are angry at black people who won't stand for the national anthem and will kneel for the national anthem. But these people will kneel in front of a profane American flag while strippers are holding it, claiming that their parental rights are being infringed upon. What is going on in this country? And here to help us figure that out, I've asked our good friend Jared Yates Sexton to come talk with us. Jared is one of my favorite people. He's a political analyst, host of the Muckrake podcast, also the book American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
You know, Rick, I never knew that this collapse into a dystopia was going to be so bizarre. You know, I just kind of thought it'd be a paint by numbers sort of nightmare, but this is a whole new ballgame, isn't it?
No, it's crazy. I mean, you stop and I saw this picture today online, and I'm going, this is just nuts. I mean, you got this family with a whole bunch of little kids. I mean, these are little kids who are, kneeling down in front of this F. Joe Biden flag with strippers bent over holding it. And I'm going, family, nothing says family values more than obviously this. And they're smiling, giving the finger. And I'm going, am I missing something here? And this is really the fall of our country, the fall of whatever family value there is or whatever.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Boebert, because I mean, it's like now we've reached a point where our representatives are people who, ran a restaurant where everybody carried guns and got sick because they didn't want to bring in inspectors. I mean, really, it's a laugh a minute, and you have to laugh because otherwise you would cry. This is just nightmarish all the way around, man. And every single day that this goes on, it just grows more and more absurd just by the hour. Yeah,
but here's the screwy thing. If this guy gets this Dave Let's Go Brandon Williams gets this on the ballot, he wins hands down. You just know it. In one of these districts, if he puts that on there are a bunch of dim-witted puddle brain flag monkeys who are going to drag their knuckles in there and vote for this guy. You just know it.
I do. And I gotta tell you, the whole Let's Go Brandon thing, let's just be frank about this. It's so stupid. It doesn't even sound like what people think it does. It's just a bunch of people repeating an online meme to one another. And that's the only thing the Republican Party has at this point. They have no agenda, no principles, no goals for the country. All they have is simple, stupid spite at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And it's one of those things where you go, yeah, go Brandon, and take this idiot with you.
I hate it. It makes me mad every time I see it, every time there's a sticker. I mean, I've got one of these flags in my neighborhood, and it's just like, really, this is what we've devolved into. I mean, it's like degeneration right before your eyes.
No, for me, it's who's that comedian? Here's your sign. That's it. Here's your sign. That's it. I mean, these are people who are showing us who they are. So I'm happy. I'm happy they're flying their flag. I'm happy they're showing me who they are, so I can move on and try and figure out how we save people who are actually going to help us move in a positive direction. Now, you had a tweet that caught my attention today that I thought was really, kind of important for today. You said, as long as the conditions precipitating this new wave of authoritarianism are not addressed, there's going to be vulnerability to these narratives that you were talking about. The right is aggressively courting lonely and aggrieved men and giving them a moment and a purpose. And I mean, this is their moment. These are guys who are ticked off. Life hasn't turned out the way that they were sold, because we can go through 1,000 reasons why, but the right-wing outrage machine is feeding them the outrage candy and pointing them at gays, at minorities, at women, at everybody but where they should be pointed at, and they're taking their anger out on all of us.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I found in my research that really just becomes more and more obvious all the time is that these conspiracy theories are just used by the rich and powerful to deflect anger that they rightfully deserve. In all of this, the conditions in the United States of America, and something that you and I have talked about in the past, neoliberalism and hypercapitalism and the Republican Party have just absolutely just hollowed out this country. They've taken away any ability for people to make money or keep ahead or stay out of debt or have anything even nearing what used to be called the American dream. Somebody has to explain that to people. And the only people making that explanation right now, between people actually trying to help it, are these authoritarians who are creating these conspiracy theories about the deep state, about groomers, about QAnon, whatever it is. They are giving an explanation, but it is very purposefully keeping the blame away from the rich and powerful who have created the problem in the first place.
No, I mean, I look at inflation. Inflation is hurting everybody. I should not say everybody. Everybody who punches a clock and works for a living and collects a paycheck. It's hurting everybody who works for a living. The working class is suffering under the inflation. But it ain't Joe Biden. You can slap your cute stickers all over everything that you want. It's not Biden's fault. It's the fault of corporate America, who's taking this as an opportunity to go, hey, we can blame Joe Biden for choosing to raise prices, fatten our bottom line and our paycheck, and blame somebody else for it. This is good old-fashioned American greedy capitalism at its finest. That's it, pure and simple.
That's exactly right, and it couldn't be summed up any better. I just want to say real fast, Rick, I've been around this block a couple times. It's really weird when a Democratic president gets in office, like inflation takes off and suddenly corporations don't hire people. It's almost like they don't like the possibility that things could possibly ever change or get reined in. And in the midst of all of this, you look at this inflation thing, it is literally nothing but corporate greed and gouging at this point. I mean, the moment that the Ukraine war started, they simply, they were like, let's drag it even further. Let's see how far we can go with this. And it's literally hurting people left and right. But yeah, it's not Biden's fault. It's not the Democratic Party's fault. It's nothing but unabashed greed at this point.
But how do you then get that message out? Because here's the sad reality, and I blame Democrats for this.
Yep. There
are few voices out there saying this message. The right wing has built an incredibly powerful infrastructure. The corporate-controlled media is doing nothing but pounding Biden. There are no positive stories about the good things Biden's done to help working people. At the beginning of the show, I talked about, the Butch-Lewis Act that saved multi-employer pension funds, talked about the infrastructure bill that's going to help rebuild our infrastructure and create good union jobs, talked about saving apprenticeship programs that's going to help workers get the training that they need and good quality jobs out of that. There's a lot of good things that he's done. You don't hear peep out of anyone about that because our corporate controlled media needs the narrative that things are horrible, the sky is falling, and it's all the Democrats' fault because, well, why?
Well, I'll tell you this. Since the 1950s, particularly with McCarthyism, the Republican Party has absolutely capitalized on nothing more than fear. They've given tax cuts to the wealthy and basically run up one deficit after another and not even holding with their espoused principles. But the Democratic Party is basically lying on the ground in a fetal position at this point. They're so terrified to state anything because they're afraid of being called a wild-eyed leftist. Meanwhile, even the most centrist or right-leaning policy that the Democrats could ever come to, they're then called socialists, then they're then called radicals. It happens regardless of what they do. The problem here is that the Democratic Party is too afraid to stand up and say what they believe in or even give a name to it. And on top of that, like they're terrified to start looking towards labor or looking towards people of color. They have to go back to their original base before they move to the right towards Reaganism. But for whatever reason, they're just terrified to do it.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. I've been saying this for decades. The reality is the kitchen table is where Democrats should live. Making sure that there's food on the table, that kids don't go to bed hungry, making sure that people have a roof over their head, making sure that nobody goes to bed worrying that if they get sick, they're going to be homeless or bankrupt, making sure that seniors don't have to worry about, hey, is Rick Scott going to destroy Social Security and end my retirement? I mean, this is where I think Democrats have to live, and we got to start moving away from all of the outrage that the left gets itself involved in. Look, I'm on the side of equality. I'm on the side of all of the things that are there, but that can't be central to everything that Democrats do. We've got to be the party of bread and butter. You can do both, but you got to be the party that gets out there and fights with workers. You got to be the party that gets out there and walks picket lines and pushes for labor law reform so that everybody has an opportunity to do better. So that, look, my union contract doesn't have anything about race, doesn't have anything about sex, sexual orientation. It says the person doing this job makes this rate, this wage, has this benefit, has this benefit. That's it. That's what we need to be doing.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. And, this is a little bit of hard medicine that people don't like hearing. But in 2016, Donald Trump, and listen, he didn't mean anything that he said, but he went to the left of Hillary Clinton while going to the right of Hillary Clinton, because there's a massive, massive space there where people are dying to be talked to about jobs, about having any sort of like actual attempt at a life. And Donald Trump just straight up lied to them because nobody was talking to them. That's the issue here, is that the Democratic Party has to talk to people and say, listen, the system is broken. We know why it's broken. We know who's taking advantage of it. And meanwhile, this rhetoric that they're continuing to put out there, it's literally without any sort of meaning. They're participating in a logjam in Washington, D.C. Every agenda that they put forward is completely stalled, and they can't go forward because they don't have something to run on. There's no narrative going into the midterms. They can't say this is about corruption, this is about dark money in politics, this is about corporate money in politics. They refuse to go that route and actually start addressing the issue and talking to people, like you said, in their kitchen table.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've got to absolutely do. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Jared Yates Sexton, political analyst, host of the Muckrake podcast. Highly suggest it wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you check out Muckrake podcast. Also his book, American Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. If you got thoughts, questions, comments, you got something for Jared, give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Wanted to get your thoughts on Alex Jones. I'm actually kind of happy to see that he is going down. I think he sees that his life is about ready to be shambles. The story today, he's peddling, immunity for testimony kind of deal. Could this be the beginning of the whole ball of wax tumbling in on the January 6th nonsense? I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I mean, with Alex Jones, I mean, honest to God, one of the most influential people of the late 20th century, early 21st century. You do not get to this point in American history without someone like Alex Jones spewing his poison out on the airwaves. The idea that he would finally go down is very, very exciting. And I don't know about you, Rick. It's a poetic justice for me, the idea that he would turn on all of these creeps. That is wonderful. That's the finale that this whole thing deserves. But for me, with the January 6th commission, I got to tell you, I'll believe the justice is served when I see it, because this whole thing has just been an absolute catastrophic mess. And the fact that we haven't gotten to the root of who is actually behind this, which again, by the way, is the wealthy donors that fuel the Republican Party, we haven't even addressed that yet. So when we finally get there, I'll throw a party and celebrate. And until then, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the day after it happened, I said, fine, we're going to go get the dupes who went in there and broke stuff. We're going to get the idiot who defecated on the floor. We'll get the person who urinated on the desk. We'll get them. And maybe that's where we'll stop. And maybe we'll go one more level, but we're not going to go get the moneyed interest. And for me, those are the people who I want the people who paid for the buses. I want the people who funded those groups, the Alex Joneses, the Ali Alexanders, the Oath Keeper groups. I want the money behind those institutions who riled these people up, pointed them in the directions, the people who were saying, yeah, we're going to stack up bodies, there's going to be blood in the streets. I want those people who funded it. And I'm hoping, I'm still hopeful, but I fear it's going to be too late to matter come midterms.
Yeah, I completely agree. Those are the people that need to be spotlit in this. And I got to tell you, in media, the fact that nobody talks about this is the most distressing thing. One article after another. It never mentions that the same people who funded January 6th also funded the Canadian trucker convoy. They also did the reopen, movement or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they push this stuff all the time and they get off scot-free, and they literally are trying to overthrow democracy. So I'm hopeful at some point this gets addressed, but that would get to the actual nut of the problem in all of this. This is the corruption, this is the authoritarianism that's taking over.
No, and I think it's important that, because you've hit on something that's important that I've been talking about for a long time, because these are all the same bad actors. These are the same people who started the think tanks back in the 70s, who have moved right through to these expansive state policy networks and all of these euphemistically named attack groups, like Moms and Puppies and, Freedom this and that. And all of these groups who, they're just organizing good, concerned, grassroots AstroTurf groups to go and for instance, yesterday we had a guy on, my friend Cyril Michaleko, who points out that, in Bucks County, they're recruiting parents to be spies on teachers because, the teacher might say something so that they can have their assault squad go attack the school with lawyers and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff, basically silencing the teachers. They canceled the play Rent. They've been doing the play Rent for decades. But because it might offend one of these crazy Nazi parents, we had to cancel it.
Well, and I'm glad that we brought this up, because that's another link in this chain. All of this CRT/groomer accusations in public schools, this is all being funded by the exact same people who funded January 6th, the trucker convoy, who basically every time a Republican is elected president, the Heritage Foundation hands them a guide on how to be president. This is about privatizing public education. It's about getting a bunch of local people terrified, so they'll run for school board, they'll hand it over to corporations and these private interests. It is an ongoing attack on our way of life, and that's legitimate. It's not a conspiracy theory. Like you said, this goes back literally, I believe, to 1971 is when the Powell memo was released. And ever since then, you have had a systematic destruction of not just liberal democracy, but also an attack on the people and their ability to have jobs and care for themselves and live anything of a decent life. Like, this is the untold story in all of this.
Yeah, the treatise to save free enterprise, which means repeal the 20th century and return us to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s.
That's exactly right. I mean, back in the days where we're begging for porridge. I mean, literally. Because, I mean, you know this as well as I do. If these people didn't have checks on their power, and if we don't fight back against them, we're looking at not just minimum wage going away. We're seeing the 40-hour work week going away. We're going to see the child labor laws repealed. That's where these people want to go. And that's not fear-mongering. That's in their own materials. They want to go back into the era of the robber barons in which children were getting caught in presses left and right. And that's not a joke. That's legitimately what their aims are.
Yep. No, they're very clear. They think Lochner was wrongly decided, and they want to take us back to that era. You are so spot on. But Jared, as always, I appreciate the time. It is fabulous having you here on the show. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
Yeah, look out for that Mom and Puppies Political Action Committee. We got to keep on the lookout for those people.
They're coming for you. They're coming. Good stuff. Thanks so much, Jared. Always great talking with you. Our good friend, Jared Yates Sexton. Make sure you check out his Muckrake podcast. We'll get links out on social media, how you can do that. Also, the book, American Rule, How the Nation Conquered the World and Failed Its People. Quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
The world is watching as Vladimir Putin uses oil to fund his war in Ukraine. Tragically, we've seen this before. If we rely on foreign dictators and fossil fuels, this cycle will only continue. Starting now, let's decide who makes our energy. By investing in more clean energy right here in America, we can cut off the power of tyrants. Renewable, clean energy. That's real American energy independence.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Yeah, I tell you, Jared's spot on. They do want to do away with minimum wage. They want to do away with all of the labor laws that were passed during the New Deal. Repeal the 20th century. I mean, it's what they want to do. Let's quick go to the phone lines. Got Gary on line one. Gary, how we doing today?
Good. You sound good. I wanted to say, first of all, it's really great. I appreciate having a voice for labor on the radio. And I just wish they had more of you guys on TV sets because they needed to deprogram a lot of these people on the right. So, or in the center, don't know either. But I've jotted down a few things to talk about. One is Nafta. You know, we were promised cheaper products and stuff. Well, that sure didn't happen with, and then they got their taxes too here. But it didn't happen with the automobiles. I remember buying one that was 1 or 2 years old for about $4,000 in the 70s. And it was a little smaller, like I get car. And now they're, 46,000. The smaller ones are somewhat less, but it just didn't work out, you know. And I was against that the first time. You know, I support Clinton, but I'm not on that stuff. Robert Rice left the administration after that, I believe.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, NAFTA was a horrible thing. And look, I blame Clinton for signing NAFTA, but understand, NAFTA was birthed under Ronald Reagan. It was fully negotiated under H.W. Bush. Yeah. He signed the first couple rounds of it. And the only credit I give Clinton is he tried to put some toothless labor and environmental standards in it. It was still bad. It was still crap, but it was the direction the whole country was moving, except for those of us in labor who were fighting against it. And it's been proven that we were right. And the crazy little guy with the big ears, if you remember him, Ross Perot, and the giant sucking sound. I'm with you.
I was campaigning for Tom Harkin, your Wellstone's closest colleague in the Senate, and he didn't have the personality to get anywhere. But I remember Clinton was talking about fair trade, which I didn't like. And then when he got in, he went all the way over to Bush's thing on NAFTA and that. But he did a lot of good too, Clinton, I guess. But
I don't know about that.
Anyways, I got a different thing here. I was watching the mood news on TV last week. They're starting to say we got to do something about climate changes or catastrophes might end our lives and all that. Where were they 30 years ago? They're trying to do something about it, you know. And then the trick is why they do it. Here's Bill Gates pushing nuclear power to fulfill the fossil fuels. So there's always an ulterior motive with that big money.
Nope, you're spot on. You're right. I mean, if we as a country demanded it, we could solve the problem. It's just we've been so badly divided on this that I fear we're going to do nothing until it's too late.
Well, I tell you one thing about that. You were talking about divide and conquer. The rights revolution, women's rights, minority rights, racism stuff, and others too, you know, gay rights, they use that against us, a backlash, and they exploit it to the tilt, you know. And I remember Jay Gould reading that in People's History when he made that statement, and that's what they're doing to us, I think.
Absolutely. You were spot on, Gary. I appreciate the call, man. Great stuff. Call back again soon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks so much. No, I mean, they are. It's divide and conquer at its finest. And they are, you know, as the Gould quote goes, they can easily pay off the working class to murder the other half. And this is where we can't allow this. And look, you know, I've said this before. You know, the gay marriage issue, the transgender stuff, the abortion stuff, not my issues. I want to be on the right side of it. I want people to pursue their right, their freedom, their choice, pursue their happiness, get government out of their lives. But ultimately, this has got to be about people being able to support themselves. equally. I'm in favor of equal rights for all across the board, and that means everyone. I believe in those words that the founders put on paper, even if they didn't when they wrote it. That's the important part of where we are and where we need to go. Seems simple to me. Thanks for the call, Gary. Good stuff.
The good news is America is coming back. More jobs, more building, more of what makes our country great. And more cities and towns, more small businesses and big corporations are choosing the highly skilled, highly trained members of the IBEW to do the work. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers is committed to doing the job right, on time, and safely. America is making a big comeback, and the IBEW is proud to do our part.
Calling all builders. Your country is calling you. Tackling climate change is the job of our lifetime. It's time to build back better. Let's get to work.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. So, South Carolina, I'm sure a bunch of crazy people down in South Carolina not happy as the highest court in the land today said, sorry, we're going to temporarily block your firing squad. Evidently, they were set to have a firing squad execution. That evidently on hold. I'm not going to say it isn't going to happen. It's on hold. It would have been the first ever. Could have been the first ever firing squad to murder somebody. And look, I've always been very clear about my stance on capital punishment. I understand vigilante justice. I understand if someone kills your child and you go for revenge. I get that. Completely understand. And if I'm on the jury, I might not convict. I don't condone state-sponsored murder for a bunch of reasons. One of them being our system is badly broken, and it's usually poor people and people of color who are the ones executed. You very rarely see a rich guy get executed. And I know there are some people who say, well, we should go after those bankers. Yeah, I'm still against capital punishment. I would rather them live a very long life locked in a box. And I know that's cruel and unusual. Yeah, so is murdering somebody, but it is what it is. Trump's Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, came out and was fairly interesting. Had a very interesting comment. He was against the federal judge in Florida who struck down the mask mandate. And I thought that was interesting. He said it probably is because of animus against Biden, and you go, yeah, duh, you think? Because it's certainly not on the law. Now the CDC has asked the Justice Department to go and appeal it to the federal courts. I think they have to. Although if I were making the decision, I don't know that I would. I mean, you're only asking for a short period of time. I know the precedence that this sets in case we have to go back and do it again, that if this is the last thing, it's a higher hurdle to do it again if we need to. I kind of get that. But politically, looking at this, moving the tea leaves around, at this point, if you're not smart enough to go, I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to sit next to a guy who's coughing and hacking. I think maybe I think airlines should go, hey, we should have a mask section. If you want to wear a mask, you sit with people who do. If you don't, you sit with people who don't. Maybe we should do some of that. But this idea that we're gonna now, we've lifted it and now gonna reimpose it, I think it's just gonna make it much more difficult on the workers. Because I'll tell you, I have the stories I've heard from these flight attendants and the stories that I've heard from people who have tried to enforce these mandates on crazy people. I wouldn't want to, man, I wouldn't do that job. I couldn't do that job. Just dealing with, I don't know how people do it. I guess desperation. I guess that's what it is. You need the money that bad that you're willing to put up with Karen and Ken or whatever we're calling the male version of Karen. I don't know how they do it. But yeah, we'll see if the DOJ is going to do it. because originally they said they would seek to appeal it if the CDC wanted them to. They haven't given an official statement yet, but I assume they will. And look, I guess it was only till the end of the month, the beginning of May. So seems like a short period of time. I'd be stepping back from it, going, you know what? If at this point you haven't figured it out, if at this point you're not smart enough to do it in that environment, you good luck. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just my thought process and how my mind works and all this. We used to be a country that believed in personal responsibility. We used to be that country. Sadly, I don't think we are anymore. We're a party of two. We've got a party of 2-year-olds, and they're all throwing their tantrums. Just look around. Look at the state of Tennessee. How crazy is that? Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you grab the podcast at our website, thericksmithshow.com, or wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Podbean, Stitcher, everywhere in between. Always there, always available. Share it with your friends. Also, make sure you follow us on social media. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.